Good morning, ladies and germs, and welcome to my live stream. I want to complain about the people who aren't here, which is kind of ridiculous. But I've lost so many viewers, man. When I first started out, I was getting like 150 a day. Now I get like 20. Can you hear me all right? Whatever. I just need to get that out of my system, I need a live stream in which I can very quickly just get that out of my system, and I can't edit it later. I just got to say it. What happened? Look, right now I got like one viewer. And then when this is over, I'll have like 20 viewers. What's the point? What is the point? And at the same time, it's not the point. It's not important. Of course it's not important. I'm not doing it for that reason. But it's funny how it actually just feels like an insult. And it says something about the fact that for all my talk about transcendence and everything, ultimately I am limited to how my community responds to me. I am socialized. I am hungry for socialization. I want to be accepted in terms of the things I do. It's like heading out into the middle of the market square and standing on a soapbox and no one listens to you. No one stops to listen to what you have to say. I remember in university they had this free speech alley. And I used to walk past that and stop and listen to those speakers, and I was 18 years old, and I so wanted to get up there and talk, and I just couldn't. I could not do it. I was so afraid. And at some point, finally, I got up the nerve, and I have no idea what I talked about. I probably talked about Jesus, because for about a year in the university, in freshman year, the end of freshman year, I was a Jesus freak. So I guess there's something like that in this desire to not so much seeking out attention or accolades or praise or viewership, but just an impulse to do this kind of thing, some basic impulse that many of us have and many of us are not very good at, unfortunately. And I can see in what ways I am a bad teacher also through these videos. Because I don't prepare anything, and I feel like preparing something is a mistake. Imagine, for example, you're writing a poem, and you prepare a list of talking points prior to writing it. Just not done. You might outline a novel before you write it, but I don't even do that. It kills the inspiration for me. I like the improvisational aspect of it. It's not about improvisation. It's something else entirely. Just erase that word from your mind, because it's not a question of coming up with something in the moment. It's not about that. It's about the world speaking into you. It's like being a vessel, and as it pours out of you, you're not directing it anywhere. I don't know. And of course then to do something well in that regard, to spit up words that fall into an ordering that is pleasing to a listener is accidental. So if ever my videos are any good, it's complete accident. And I've been editing them to some extent, cutting them into pieces, cutting out the breath, which is interesting as a poet. Yes, I consider myself a poet. As a poet, I'm cutting out the breath in order to make it more entertaining. Because I feel like people are just so impatient, they don't want to wait for breath. I am bored. I watch my own videos, and where I have to breathe, as in now, I feel there's something wrong. I don't know how they do it. It really makes it makes the process by which they produce these shows professionally look all the more crafty. They really craft these things. And I can see in what way I completely lack the craft. But I do have a topic in mind. I did come to this live Logorrhea, this live stream. Did I even say, good morning, ladies and germs, and welcome to my Logorrhea? I do have something in mind. I want to talk about the hatred of Islam that I see in the English-speaking world. It amazes me. British people and Americans come together on this. The friends I have in Turkey, who have all been to university and of course all speak English, they hate Islam. I don't know anybody who doesn't hate it. I have a friend from Iran originally, and then England, UK. He hates Islam. Everybody hates Islam. I swear, and okay, I'll just cut to the chase. It's it's the Jews. It is. It's the Jews, man. Hey, listen. Don't change channels. Don't go somewhere else, man. You see, you're so sensitive. If I talk about Islam, I could say anything I want. You won't go anywhere. You'll listen. You'll be like, yes, hate them. Let's hate them together. But if I talk about the Jews, suddenly you got to go somewhere else. I tell you. I'm not saying any of this for the sake of tolerance or for the sake of these watchwords, multiculturalism or something, as if Islam is a culture. Fuck all that. Fuck all that kind of talk. Islam is an interesting and beautiful phenomenon. It's based on an amazing artistic event, the writing of the Quran. And despite all the crazy fundamentalism that surrounds it, it's still a really beautiful thing. And the people that are getting waylaid and end up strapping bombs to themselves or whatever are so few and far between. It's like 1 in 10,000 people, 1 in 50,000 people who are engaged in terrorism. But who controls the media? Who has the most to gain by convincing you that you should hate Islam? I won't even answer that question. Obvious answer. Israel is at war with Islam. Israel, the nation, is at war with Islam. And let's just go back a minute. Just pause a second and consider the fact that Israel is a new country. It was brought in there by outsiders, by so-called Christian, but essentially secular entities, nations, who were fighting their own war and who decided, based on this crazy Holocaust narrative, that they would send this group of people down and let them take over a country. Palestine was a mandate. Yeah, well, so were all the other places around there. And the British promised to return that country to its people. But instead, they just handed it over to a sworn enemy of Islam. The Jews were already a sworn enemy. They already had all kinds of issues. And Islam already had many issues with Jewish peoples living within their countries in a parasitic relationship. But what a great idea for controlling the oil, to send down this influence that would keep this area incapable of uniting, incapable of coming together under one banner of identity, which would have been Islam. So yes, it's a big conspiracy, and it's a terrible history, a horrible history that continues even now in this extreme mistreatment of Palestinians, which is far worse than slavery in the U.S. over a period of 200 years. It's far worse than what happened in Nazi Germany. What's happening in Israel now is much worse than whatever happened in Nazi Germany. And the word Holocaust does not describe what happened in Nazi Germany. It's far more complex. The Jews were not making friends of the Germans. The Jews seldom did make friends of the host country in which they lived and worked parasitically, so long as they retained that identity. And then even when it's no longer a question of religion, they retain the identity and claim that now they are secular Jews. Let it go, man. Let it go. Be German or American or whatever, but let that business go. What am I? I'm like Irish, German, Scottish. I could claim something. My last name would position me somewhere on the map of Europe, and I could claim it and never let it go and go to meetings, I suppose. But what's the point of doing something like that when it's creating all this trouble for me and people like me? The Nazis were responding to a negative force within their country. They weren't just hateful devils. No one is just a hateful devil. These were human beings responding to something in their lives, and history will not allow that. History will not allow that the Jewish peoples in Germany provoked anger and resentment over a period of 100 years or more. Am I about to be cut off? Error. YouTube's going to cut me off. So all this I'm not going to say it. I don't like the word phobic. I don't think it's a useful term. It actually, it actually means to have not hatred, but a aversion to something. Phobia actually means an aversion, but in my world, it's just fear. And I'm not trying to say anyone is afraid of Islam, but there's all this bad sentiment and this feeling that these are our enemies. Islam is not your enemy. If anything, Islam is much closer. You talk about a Judeo-Christian tradition. Judeo-Christian are two completely different ideologies. Islam, Christianity, very similar. Very similar histories, very similar response that these societies have to this form of governance. Consider that Christianity, Islam, and Judaism are all just forms of government. Christianity and Islam are nearly the same form. You go on about Sharia law. I don't know. I can't address all of your issues. I know that they are legion. I know you have an endless number of issues that you can complain about. But the truth is, if anyone is your brother, like somebody, it was actually my ex-wife wrote a week ago, 2 weeks ago or something, saying we walk hand in hand with the Jews. If you walk hand in hand with anyone as a Christian, it should be Islam. They base their religion on belief, on faith. You're walking hand in hand with racists if you walk hand in hand with Jews. You walk hand in hand with a self-interested, tribalist point of view. And Christianity is pretty much the same, sadly, in practice with many churches and many religious figures, but ideologically it's not that. And the same is true of Islam. Ideologically, Islam is not trying to do harm to anyone. Ideologically, Islam is almost exactly the same as Christianity. Come be a part of this wonderful new movement. Muhammad just wanted to bring all the people within his region together. They were all fighting each other. They were all tribalist. They were different tribes, all at odds. And he saw the opportunity through this revelation. I believe it. He had a revelation. The guy couldn't even read or write. And yet he comes down from his cave, I imagine it was up somewhere on a kind of mountain. He comes down from the hill, leaves his cave after Gabriel visits him, whatever. He had a little psychotic episode. But something was drilled into him, and you know what it is? It's a song. The whole Quran is a song. How beautiful. What a beautiful thought. Leave it at that. Stop hating it. It's just a song, and it's an amazing song. If you could speak Arabic, which I can't either, but if you could, you'd be like, wow. this is one of the great works of literature. This rivals Shakespeare. It rivals Homer's Odyssey and Iliad. Forget the religiosity of it. Fuck Islam as a religion, fuck Christianity, and fuck the Jews as a religion. Fuck all religions. I'm not here to recommend multicultural, multi-religious respect or something, or even respect in belief. I don't care about your beliefs. I'm too busy trying to work out my own. And my own belief is that Islam is closer to Christianity in most every respect than Judaism, but the Jews control the media. Look, I'll bet these watchwords are showing up in YouTube's, what's it called? Algorithm. And since so many YouTube employees are not at the offices right now, they're not going to judge this. I got a notice that said, we will not be judging your videos. Humans will not be judging, a computer will be judging them. So the more I say these words, the less likely is it that this video will even make it out there. Clearly, I have issues here. I've been watching this going on for some time. I don't know anybody who doesn't hate Islam. Honestly, I don't know anyone. Nobody. None of the people that I know or have any contact with doesn't hate Islam. Okay, maybe hate's too strong a word. I listened to Christopher Hitchens and his long arguments against religion, and he singles out Islam and goes on about how terrible it is in comparison to other religions. If he was to do that about Judaism, well, of course, he would have disappeared prior to his death of cancer. He would have disappeared if he had been talking about Judaism in that way. Now, what's that about? How is that possible? How can he demonize Islam and yet he never mentions Judaism? Really, never mentions it, as far as I know. Probably, if he does, it's Zionism. That's what you guys like to do. You like to talk about, stop talking about Zionism. Just talk about Judaism as an ideology, in the way that Marx might have talked about it. Marx was pretty upfront about his prejudices concerning ideologies he disagreed with. I disagree with Judaism in the same way that Marx disagrees with capitalism. I saw this recently, this article, what's her name? Arquette. Is it Roseanne? Roseanne Arquette? She said on her, I guess it was Twitter, she made a comment about the fact that, she said, so it's true that Israel has developed a vaccine early and that, etc. And so she talked about Israel. And then she gets all these tweets from all these Jewish people, and they're all saying, shut up, fuck you. And they're really... there was Amy Kaufman as a journalist from Israel. She said, fuck you. I can't say it more clearly, or something. It's like, really? I mean, if people say bad things about America, do American journalists jump on the bandwagon, especially celebrities, and then shame them? Everybody was retweeting what she said and saying she was an idiot. And of course, she deleted the tweet. There was no one to defend her, no one to support her. In the comments, actually, it was an RT article, right? What is it? RT is Russian something, TV, maybe? Russian television. Russian television is really good, by the way. I mean, it's an alternative, just like Al Jazeera. In either case, they're not being run by the same people that runs everything else, it seems. But there were, at the comments of the RT article, everyone was saying amusing things that were just, garden variety anti-Semitism, which is actually funny at this point. It's not a question of politics anymore. It's just a question of comedy. If you want to be funny, just make anti-Semitic, without any sincerity, make anti-Semitic comments. That's amusing. Why is it amusing, and why do we derive comedy from that kind of thing? The same reason we derived comedy from Richard Pryor talking about white people so many years before. It's the same reason we derive comedy from fat female comedians talking about men. There's a kind of whatever. See, and here it's a live stream. Probably can't even hear me. He's probably cutting out all the time. Everything sucks, man. Everything sucks. But these pauses, I'm so embarrassed by these pauses. If I go back and check these videos just to try to see, well, how am I doing? I'm incredibly conscious of the pauses. And so when I get into one of these live streams, I end up trying to talk really fast. I don't think before I speak. It's much more actual logorrhea because I'm nervous and because I'm hyper conscious of the pauses. The way to deal with that, of course, is to have some kind of a list of talking points in front of me. But as I said, it doesn't work for me. And as a teacher, it doesn't work for me, which means that about 40% of the time I'm actually, I think, entertaining or informing my students, and here probably similarly. That's a high number. That's a high guess. Probably closer to 20 or 30% of the time. Am I lucky enough? And I wouldn't want to wallow through all of my logorrhea to arrive at the good stuff. In any case, I guess I've said what I wanted to say. Islam is not what you think it is, and whoever you are, your bad feelings about Islam are a product of Jewish influence coming out of the West. I say this even to my there's nobody there. Educated Turks. You educated Turks, you're no different. You are no different than the educated Americans who have such a problem. You say, oh, this Erdogan, he's doing all these terrible... He hasn't done anything so very terrible. And so what if you have fundamentalism in your country? It's not the end of the world. Sadly, what you lack... Oh, well, actually, education is what you lack. And what is it? It's indoctrination. Oh, if only we had better education, we could indoctrinate them differently than they're being indoctrinated now. Islam is not the problem. And Islam is not trying to dissimulate and change the meanings of terms and enter into the realm of scholarship and make claims about what is true in the world based on social sciences and so on. Islam is nowhere near the kinds of strategies that Jewish peoples have been up to for quite a long time, at least 60, 70 years. If you want to hate... Well, don't hate anyone, but if you want to claim that there's a problem with some religion, it's Judaism. The Jews are the problem in terms of religion. Boy, that's a huge statement. I know. I don't even mean to make a statement like that. But Christopher Hitchens going on about religion, he's not going on about religion. Ultimately he's talking about Islam. It's all a prejudice toward Islam, and he talks all around it. Peterson talks all around a lot of things, and ultimately Marxism. Jordan Peterson, he goes on and on about Marxism and how dangerous it is. He's talking about the Jews. I'm sorry. I know I sound like an idiot. Maybe not an idiot, just a nutcase. Yeah, okay, that's all right. I am a nutcase. Fine. But Jordan Peterson is talking around it, and Christopher Hitchens talked around it, and all these thinkers are consistently talking around it. And I'll say again, there's a guy, Kevin D. MacDonald, who, social sciences, mind you, but he went up against this whole narrative that originates in a Jewish attempt to protect itself from what it calls a Holocaust. Just for the record, the Jewish peoples were protecting themselves from a Holocaust long before Nazi Germany. So they just found an opportunity to make use of their own mythologies. The Holocaust is a product, a manifestation of a mythology. Anyway, Kevin D. MacDonald, social scientist. I don't know where he falls exactly. Cultural studies or something. I don't even know what his. I mean, he's a sociologist, maybe. But he's in the social sciences, and he went up against this narrative, and they couldn't knock him out of the university, but they pretty much destroyed his life. And over a period of 15, he's still out there. Over a period of 15 or 20 years, I haven't been watching him all that time. Not even that long. Let's say 5 years. What I have seen is a man become radicalized. He begins with, a academic, scholarly view of how one group, one ethnic identity is responding to the world around it. And then as the years progress, he just becomes more and more or less a white supremacist is what they would call him. And you know why they call him a white supremacist? Because he's talking about how to protect white people from being pushed out of becoming a minority, of becoming a weak influence in America and so on. Well, why shouldn't he? The Jews, that's what the Jews are doing. That's what they're talking about. But the moment that white people speak in the way that Jews speak, they're white supremacists, and they must be stopped. And they're shamed into not thinking in a particular way. I think your dislike for Islam, and I'm speaking to you, your dislike of Islam is in the same realm of disinformation and inaccurate terminology and a vocabulary that controls your thought, absolutely controls your thought. And trying to speak against it, trying to speak above it or outside of it, trying to transcend that narrative, it makes a person crazy. We are dependent upon our social identity. And I feel a little crazy when I try to talk about this. It's what brings me back to it over and over again. I'm going to sneeze. I come back to this over and over again, even though, I lose friends and people lose respect for me. And I want to be respected as a thinker to some extent, who doesn't, I guess. But even though I seem to lose the respect, I don't know why I lose respect. I don't know. I don't really understand anything that goes on outside of this, place in here. I don't know what goes on out there. But whatever the consequences, I come back to this idea because it rattles me. It's so unjust. It's so imbalanced. It's so false. It's just a straight up lie. And it permeates everything within Western society. All the television shows, all the news shows, anything related to the coronavirus, people complaining about Trump calling the virus the Chinese virus. That's within the same narrative, within the same realm, and all of it originating in the idea that we must not have another Holocaust. That's all of it. Even when black people now are trying, what did I see recently? I watched this movie yesterday with Kristen Stewart, who I don't like her because she's a lesbian. I don't like her because she's a lesbian. And I'll tell you why. I know already you're moving away. Or I see there's one viewer out there. It's probably me. Or someone who hates me. Someone who's waiting for me to return to the States just so they can kill me, just because they hate me. Yeah, I have issues. Fine. Oh, Kristen Stewart. Being a lesbian at this point in time is such a political act. It's not really I don't buy it. I don't buy it that Kristen Stewart, after all of her male relationships for years, is now suddenly a lesbian. There's that joke that I think has a lot of truth in it. What's the difference between a lesbian and a straight woman? 2 drinks. So Kristen Stewart claiming to be a lesbian is just a woman frustrated with her relationships in the past. By the way, her girlfriend is so manly. I mean, all she lacks is a penis. She could probably have that attached, installed. So it's a movie called Seberg, and it's about Jean Seberg and her relationship with this Black Panther in the 1960s. And supposedly that she was hounded until she... did she kill herself or something? Or she OD'd accidentally or something? But supposedly the effect that the FBI had on her eventually caused her death, because they were hounding her because she was involved in... The idea of the movie is that all the white people were racist in the United States. All the black people, the Black Panthers, were righteous and were fighting the good fight and were good people. And the FBI, a bunch of white men, didn't like the fact that this white girl was dating this black guy, and so it's all a false narrative, and it's all pushing this idea once again, as ever, that white people were so evil, just like the Nazis were so evil. It's never so black and white, no pun intended. It's an unfair assessment of human beings all around, of the Black Panther fellow, of Jean Seberg, of the FBI guys, one of which was played by Vince Vaughn. I don't know why he's playing these terrible FBI people. What did he gain by that? They must have given him a lot of money, or maybe he thought it was an acting challenge. No humor, no comedy at all, and he's just looking old. And what a bad choice! What a terrible movie! Just politically wrought. Can I say that? What does that mean exactly? You know, when people are emotionally wrought, I think of it like a rag that's been twisted and twisted till all the moisture comes out of it. Emotionally wrought. This movie was politically wrought. And most movies coming out of Hollywood are politically wrought because they're so steeped. It's like if you take something that you're marinating and you marinate it much too long. Marinate something 100 times more than it should be marinated. And that's the narrative at this point that we're getting out of television, sitcoms in America, Hollywood. I'm not trying to speak of Europe or any other place. I'll speak of America, which... You know, that's something we do, by the way, we Americans. That's something ideologically we depend upon, is that we speak up and speak our minds and are open about our opinions and are open to debate and are open to discussing things. We are tolerant of ideas in America. That's our tradition. Not tolerant of race, not tolerant of religion. We are tolerant of ideas, or should be. That's our tradition. And I am following that tradition and speaking my mind in this moment and saying that I don't hear anyone else saying it, apart maybe from losers like me who happen to have access to a camera and a YouTube connection. Stop hating on Islam. Recognize that you've been manipulated. Islam is not the problem. Most definitely not the problem. And you know what? The terrorists and terrorism and so on, 911, those people are not crazy. They had a reason to say, we need to fight back. America is doing terrible things the more it supports Israel. It's no wonder that terrorists then turn against America. It's no wonder that that's happening. It's logical, it's rational. If anything, we should respect the fact that these Muslim countries in the Middle East are fighting back. They've been raped. When Palestine was handed over to a ethnic identity that if anything would have preferred to see I mean, look at the Old Testament. You want to talk about the Bible? Look at the Old Testament and how God spoke to the Jews about enemies like the Philistines. Philistine is Palestine, right? Palestine, Philistine. Look at that history. Look at the Jews and the Philistines and how God said we must wipe them off the face of the earth and so on. So Churchill and Roosevelt and Stalin decide to bring these Jews with this history toward the Philistines, bring them and plop them down in Palestine. And what happened? What happened? The Jews got all this money from the United States and all this weaponry, and they genocided the Palestinians. The only Palestinians remaining are those that are treated like animals. They're just killed left and right, and most of them had to just leave the country completely. In fact, they were told, go ahead and leave the country for a little while, take all of your belongings, take your house keys with you. There's a great book called Pity the Nation by Robert Fisk that talks about Israel, Palestine in the 1980s. It's amazing. It's such an indication of the wrong that's been committed and that continues to be committed against humanity. It's a crime against humanity. During the 1980s, 95% of America's foreign aid went to Israel. Can you imagine? That much money going to that place. Why? For the oil, to protect the oil. And then step into the 90s and suddenly we're getting rid of Saddam Hussein and occupying Iraq. For God's sake, imagine if something like that happened to America. What would Americans do? Americans would let's just give Alabama to the Muslims. Watch what happens. And even 50 years down the road, watch what happens. It ain't going to be pretty, because Americans don't lie down. They're not sheep. And you know what? Neither are those Muslims. And why aren't Americans sheep? Maybe it's part of the Christian ethic, which Muslims share fundamentally. It's not subterfuge. Subterfuge is not where Christians and Muslims turn in order to respond to oppression, not dissimulation, not lying, etc. There's a more, face forward honesty, etc. These things are important. It's not true of what Jewish Americans are doing, and it's not true of what Israel has been doing. There's so much subterfuge, so much dissimulation. I don't see that in Islam. My computer's running out of, in such a short amount of time. Like, how long have I been talking? About 40 minutes. Yeah, I guess a couple of weeks ago, I was really trying to think of content that would entertain people and so on. But what's the point? I mean, it's not working. Just be honest and just try to have fun. And this morning I have managed to get a lot of things off my chest. And what difference does it make if anyone watches it? This is just my personal archive. And fuck you. Fuck YouTube. Fuck anybody watching, even those who come later. Just fuck everybody. That's the attitude what person has to have, but without saying it, I guess. I don't know. I guess some people are good at it. I'm not good with people. So, please respond about the Islam stuff. Explain to me where I'm wrong. No one will. Fuck everybody.